This video takes you through the process of integrating the Identity Authentication Service with your SuccessFactors system. Initiating this process configures the password-based login method for your users. Integrating the Identity Authentication Service requires the following process. 1. You'll need to initiate the upgrade using the SuccessFactors Upgrade Center. 2. If you're using SSO with a third-party corporate identity provider, configure that corporate identity provider in IAS. 3. Configure your login method if the default password-based method does not meet your needs. 4. Configure your Identity Provisioning Service or IPS settings. Although these settings are configured for you during the upgrade process, you'll still need to review and edit some of those settings. And 5. Enable IAS using the SuccessFactors Upgrade Center. Before you start the process, make sure that you have your S username and password, and you're an administrator with access to the Upgrade Center. Let's get started with the Upgrade Center. From the platform area of your Upgrade Center, select Create SuccessFactors Identity Authentication Service Integration. After clicking Upgrade Now, enter your S user credentials. And after they've been successfully validated, and only if prompted, enter the IAS URL and verify that you're ready to start the process. Before we get into your IAS console, let's prepare your API user. This user is called IPS Admin and was created for you during the upgrade process, but we'll need to set up some additional configurations. From your password and login policy settings, click to add an API login exception. After you've entered the IPS Admin username, we'll need to set your password so that it does not expire. And we'll need to add the IP address ranges to secure your IAS login from unlisted IP addresses. After you've saved those changes, let's give your IPS admin the permissions it needs to sync users. From the permission roles screen, you'll see that I've created a role that gives the user assigned to that role, the IPS admin in this case, the necessary permissions. The first permission is to allow admins access to OData through basic authentication. And the second permission is the export users permission. After saving those changes, we'll need to reset the password for the IPS admin. From the Reset User Password area, I'll enter the username of the user that needs a password reset. In your case, it'll be the IPS admin, the API user you just gave permissions to. And after entering the new password twice, I'll select to reset the user password. The next step in the integration process will be to set up login methods using the Identity Authentication Administration Console. The IAS console is your resource for configuring login methods for your users. You can use it to configure password policies, conditional authentication, SSO, and other login methods. So in this section of the video, we'll give you a brief overview of where you can configure your login options, and our documentation provides details about how you can configure those login options, as well as how to configure third-party corporate IDPs and how to set up IAS user groups. As an IAS admin with a new system, you should have received an email with your link to log into IAS, and you can use your S user credentials to log in. After you've logged in, you'll see the IAS home page. Expanding the left panel, you'll see what's available here. In the Users and Authorizations area, under User Management, you can add individual SuccessFactors users to IAS, but in most cases, you'll use sync jobs to add your SuccessFactors users. In User Groups, you can create groups when and if you intend to use different login methods for different groups of users. In the Administrator section, You can add additional IAS admins and control their levels of authorization here. Now let's go to the Applications and Resources area. Under Applications, you'll see that an application has been created for you and it connects to your SuccessFactors instance. Clicking on that application, you'll see that the trust properties have been configured. Scrolling down to the Conditional Authentication area, you'll see that you can set up login methods according to the types of users that are logging into your system, and you can configure SSO here. On the Authentication and Access tab, you'll see a section where you can set up rules for risk-based authentication. You'll also notice that by default, password-based logins have been configured, and they use the standard password policy, meaning that your users can log in using their username and password. If you're configuring SSO using a third-party corporate IDP, you can configure that IDP in the Corporate Identity Providers area. At this point, if you intend to use the default password-based login method, you do not need to configure these IAS login methods any further. If you do intend to use another login option, use the SuccessFactors documentation for detailed steps about how to configure those login methods. You'll want to complete these configurations before moving on to the IPS console tasks. Let's move on to step 3 in your integration process, reviewing and editing your Identity Provisioning Service properties. The Identity Provisioning Service Administration Console, or IPS, is created when you initiate the IAS upgrade, and it's where you'll maintain the user information that you transfer from SuccessFactors to IAS. Log in to the IPS console with your S user. As the IPS admin with a new IPS console, you should have received an email with your login to IPS. When you log in, you'll see the IPS homepage, similar to the IAS homepage. When you expand the left panel, you'll see a tab for your source system or SuccessFactors system, and you'll see a tab for your target system or IAS system. Since your source and target systems are configured during the upgrade process, you'll want to review these configurations and edit them as necessary. When you click onto your source system, take a look at the source system details and make sure that the system name is populated with your system name. Next, on the Properties tab, you'll notice that the source properties are pre-populated, but there might be a few modifications you still need to make. In the Password field, enter the API user or IPS admin user password that you recently reset if it's not been set for you. In the User field, you'll notice that the value is populated with your API username and your SuccessFactors instance name. Now you'll want to modify the SF User Filter field. The default values for this field will pull in all users from your SuccessFactors instance, whether active or inactive, internal or external. So you'll want to add a reduced number of users to this field for testing purposes. For example, if you want to test with one user, you can enter the following. When you switch over to your target system, you'll see that your IAS system has been created and its fields were configured during the upgrade process. The target details here contain information about the name of your IAS system, and you'll see that your source system value has been populated. But if you have multiple source systems that you want to pull users from, you can modify the value to add multiple source systems to your IPS configuration. The Properties tab contains pre-configured fields for your IAS system, and you'll notice that your user and password fields have been updated with your IAS username and password. They were also created during the upgrade process. If the user's name and password are not pre-configured, you'll need to talk with your IAS admin to get those credentials. Now let's head over to your target transformations. In the target transformations, you can control how your SuccessFactors data is received into IAS. Although there are many edits you can make to your transformations, I'd like to draw your attention to a few that are located here in the User Mappings area. The first is the Send Mail attribute. If you don't want to send emails to users from the SF user filter that we reviewed earlier, you'll want to set the Send Mail attribute to false. The next is the Password Status attribute. If you'd like IAS to do a one-time user password verification on the first login, modify the Password Status attribute to Enabled. This will ensure that the password entered matches the existing SuccessFactors password. And the last transformation is for password migration. If you intend to migrate users' passwords, you can add the following code snippet to your transformation. However, you'll need to modify the attribute values with your SuccessFactors and source system IDs. Adding this code snippet will allow your users to retain their passwords when you switch over to IAS. Each of these transformation code snippets are available for copy in our SuccessFactors documentation. Now that you've reviewed your target details, target properties, and target transformations, let's go to the fourth step in your integration process, setting up sync jobs. In your identity provisioning service, you'll want to run sync jobs to pull in your SuccessFactors users. You can run two types of jobs. The first is the read job. This job runs a delta, extracting only new user information, and you can schedule the read job on a regular basis to sync any new user information. The second is a resync job. This job runs a full load of your users, so you'll want to run this resync job the first time you sync your users. The last step in your integration process is to enable IAS. From the platform area of the Upgrade Center, select to enable IAS after you've completed your configurations. You will not have the ability to reverse this process, so ensure that you've done the following. Number 1, you've enabled IAS in the Upgrade Center. Number 2, your API user is prepared to sync users. Number 3, you've configured your login options in IAS. Number 4, you've reviewed and edited your IPS settings, including editing the SF user filter and the send mail transformation. That way you'll know who the users are who will receive emails during the sync job, or if you want users to receive an email during the sync job. And number 5, you've run the sync job.